All the classic rock you can stomach. It's the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
We're ready to move out.
Before we start, I'd like to say something. There's no reason why you shouldn't have complete confidence in your chances to come out of this thing alive and in one piece.
From coast to coast, from border to border, from one end to the other and all points in between. The Classic Guitar Rock Podcast is on.
Yes! That's awesome!
We crank up and break down the great guitar-driven rock of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And you are invited to come along.
We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes, it's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
And now, your hosts, Jeremy Lunnan and J.R. Stanton.
We've got to protect our phony baloney job, gentlemen. We must do something about this immediately.
It's time for the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast.
All right, we're here.
And we're live.
I think we were about to send out search and rescue, JR, because we haven't been here for so long.
True.
That's my fault. That's on me. But hey, thank you so much for joining us for this live and dangerous edition of the Classic Guitar Podcast.
Well, I can't be any more dangerous than I am when I'm live with you, Jeremy.
It's better than the alternative. Yes. So, thank you so much, JR, for joining me. And just a little housekeeping before we get going. And JR, I haven't even told you this. You know, I do the daily update, the Classic Daily Update. And actually, you know, I've been fairly good about doing that every day. It's usually around 9. I need to get on a set time, but I can't really do that. It's usually around 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. So that'd be like 11:30 JR's time, Central Time Zone. And so I do a little 15, 20-minute update. And actually, you know, it's doing pretty good. I get a lot of people that watch, which is great, which is awesome.
I've noticed just a lot of the same viewers. You know, when I'm watching it, it seems to be a fairly loyal crowd.
In fact, Bruce is one of our regulars, and Bruce has already chimed in. He's sitting here practicing the Message in a Bottle riff. That's a good riff to be practicing.
It is.
Thank you for being here. Anyone can chime in if you're joining us live on Facebook or X or YouTube. You should be able to comment. And we're going to post a question here, and we want everyone to play along. So the chats should be pretty busy. You got to help me stay on top of those, JR. But
I'll do my best.
Here's the logistics thing I was talking about. Beginning on maybe even tomorrow, it might even start tomorrow, I'm going to start posting the daily update as a podcast also. So okay. I don't want to confuse people. And the reason I want to do that is our biggest audience is to the podcast, right? So if I post the update there, because I think a lot of the folks that listen on the podcast don't necessarily tune in to the daily updates. So I want to merge those audiences, and I'll be completely honest, it's about world domination, JR. I don't want to.
Well, we discussed that at one point, and I think that is, you know, at some point you need to roll that out in a more efficient strategy. And I have to agree. I think that there's things that you can get done on the daily update that, you know, have a lot more social impact, constructive.
There might be some destructive impact also, but the only thing that'll make it kind of weird is, you know, we do the longer form podcast, you and I, where we're talking about an album or something. Those are like an hour long. The daily update's only like 20 minutes. So what you'll see if you're listening to the podcast is you'll see, you know, an episode. If it says daily update, obviously that's a daily update, and that's going to be a short, quick hit. Versus the longer ones that we want to. I laugh when I say this, but JR, remember our original plan was we were going to do a weekly podcast.
Yes.
And it's turned into like a every 2 month podcast.
Well, quarterly.
It's a
quarterly podcast. But we pack it with such, intensity and so much danger that, and sometimes you can't take that kind of danger on a regular basis. So I think we should venture there. I'm comfortable now.
It's in the interest of our audience's health, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's for the best. It's for the best. Absolutely. And Bruce says, I enjoy the daily update. I'm not there live every day, but generally watch the Facebook replay. You're the one. You're the one, Bruce.
It's you. Bruce.
That's great. Thank you so much, Bruce. But yeah, I think if we're posting the update, see, JR has a job, right?
It's an interesting job too.
I do too, but because I was going to say JR could even hop in on the daily update, but he's working. He's like seeing patients and stuff when he does that. So,
and I like what you have said, because I think that what you really want is to reach the most audiences and get it on a platform that allows that ease of application or ease of access. The podcast allows for that. I think people are a little bit more in tune with being able to jump on a podcast that feels comfortable for them. And the content that you put out daily, I think is superb.
Oh, well, thank you.
When I get an opportunity to engage with that, sometimes with you on if the opportunity allows. No, I think it's the right, it's the right time frame, because it's not, you're not expecting a lengthy conversation or a commitment that's longer than 5 minutes.
Exactly. And that's the thing, right? We don't have time for that long, lengthy stuff.
Well, it's hard to establish any kind of, with any kind of link or attention span beyond 5 minutes, especially in today's society. So maybe it's, if you get into the meat and potatoes with the podcast, live and dangerous, but you kind of need the other things to carry the conversation through. And I think that's timely. Especially when we do the this day in history part of the dailies.
Yep, for sure. And JR, you don't have to butter me up. You're still not going to get paid. Okay? Oh. You're still not getting paid.
Stole right through me, didn't you there?
All right. No, thank you for your kind words. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to post a question. This was actually a question that a viewer posted today during the update, and it was a really good question, and it made me really think about it. Russ Hathaway was the listener that posted it. So we're going to get to this question when we get back. Hey, this is Jeremy Lunnan, host of the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast. If you're a business owner trying to market your products or services to a growing audience, let me invite you to consider advertising here on our podcast. The Classic Guitar Rock Podcast is currently rated in the top 2.5% globally, according to listennotes.com. And our prime demographic is males aged 35 to 59. Here's one of the great things about advertising with us. An ad you run with us today will still be getting played 5 or 10 years from now. Because our episodes never expire, neither will the ads you run with us. Think about that. As our audience continues to grow, you are locked in with an ad you place now at a very low rate. It really is a phenomenal investment. If you think our demo is a great fit for your offering, it really is a no-brainer. We can do anything from a simple host-read ad to a fully produced commercial. Either way, you will be shocked at how economical it is to advertise on the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast. If you're interested, please email me, Jeremy, at classicguitarrock@mail.com. But hurry, because availability is limited.
Exclusively on ESPN Plus, UFC 313, Saturday. Reigning light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira defends his title against number 1 contender Magomed Ankalaev, and an explosive lightweight bout between Justin Gaethje and Rafael Pazzi. UFC 313, Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Buy it on espnplus.com/PPV.
I can't believe we drove around all day and there's not a single job in this town. There's nothing, nada, zip.
Yeah, unless you want to work 40 hours a week.
Jeremy Lunnan and J.R. Stanton on the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast.
Welcome back to the Classic Guitar Rock Live and Dangerous podcast. And I'm here, of course, with my partner in crime, JR. I'm Jeremy. And we had a listener, a viewer, who chimed in on the daily update today and had a great question. I'm going to put the question up on the board. And JR, putting JR on the spot, I didn't give him warning. But here we go. Let me put it up here.
And how is that different than any other podcast?
Exactly. You're right. Okay. Here we go. Here comes the question. Here's where we want you to chime in the chat, because we're going to definitely want to talk about these. Some of these are probably going to be the same, I would guess. We'll see. We'll see if any of us have the same answers for any of these. Okay, here's the question. Again, Russ Hathaway posted this today. What artists or albums came to prominence during your formative years that you never really got into until much later? Now, I'm going to give you some time to let that sink in, because I want to parse these words a little bit. Okay? So, for instance, formative years. When we're talking about music, what do you is in my mind, I think back to my own, that's probably 12 years old. That's kind of where I really started paying attention to music. 12 years old through the teen years. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that, but I will think that formative could span all the way up to age 30 for some of the immaturity level that we had. I mean, I look back and I probably, just because I was on a slower stream than maybe most, those formative years stretched a decade or so. But it was, I consider this question. That's kind of where I think was what would I sign? But I do think you're right. I think, grade school, junior high, but I think I'd even extend a little bit into high school, because I guess I wasn't the connoisseur of rock and roll that I am, that I profess to be now.
and I think you were maybe been like me in my formative years, like when I really started paying attention to music. It wasn't necessarily good music.
Oh, I hate to say I probably was a victim of the media that was put out by what the Mega Million platform labels that did a fine job of marketing to me, and I ate the cheese.
So here's I'm gonna read this question one more time, and I'm gonna add one little part at the end. Okay, the question is, what artists or albums came to prominence during your formative years that you never really got into until much later? So, in other words, who were you late to the game on? Okay, who were you late to the game on? And before, I'm trying to give JR time to think of things. I didn't give him. Okay, so here's another thing, and this might help you think. So, and we're going to get to comments as we jump in here. So, because we've already got some lined up, which is awesome. So, JR, what's the first new album? And I'm saying new because I bought some at like yard sales and stuff, and I don't know if you know that. Can you remember the very first new album you bought with your own money?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was actually not an album; it was a cassette. Okay. But it was Robert Palmer.
Really?
Yes.
So the one with
it was Bad Case of Lovin' You.
That's the one. I can't remember what that album was called. And that was about 78, 79?
Yeah. I was so disappointed
in the rest of the album.
Yes. I thought, and it was great because Bad Case of Lovin' You, that was it. That was the song that caught me. That's why I went out and bought that album. And I remember I bought another cassette at the same time for Robert Palmer, and I'm still listening to it, and it's such an eclectic approach that I was like, well, where's the Bad Case of Lovin' You? But if you listen to that album, no, there's not. But it's funny. That really just popped into my mind when you asked me that question.
So I wish I was as cool as you, because the first album I bought with my own money, Cruisin' by the Village People. That's the first one I bought. That might be something I don't need to share.
Would you classify that as rock and roll?
No, but it was classified. I was 11 years old and didn't know any better, right? And my brother almost beat me up, right?
I was going to say, you didn't have to share that.
The album came with a big fold-out poster of like the Indian and the leather man and the greasy construction worker and all of that. And I got this festooned. Well, and of course, I hung it over my brother. We shared a bedroom. I hung it over his bed because if I hang it right over my bed, I can't see it. So I hung it over his bed, and he comes in and says, "What's that doing on my wall?" Get the crap out of here. So anyways, so Bruce's first album that he bought. Now this is a good choice.
Oh yeah,
Grand Illusion by Styx. That's a phenomenal album. It's a great album.
I think he was ahead of the game.
And check out this. First professional concert was the Osmonds in 1974. Okay, so that's all right. Okay, that's all right. I mean, I think the Osmonds are better than the Village People, personally. There were some rock elements.
Okay, I'll go with you on that. I mean, I obviously I don't think I have any of the Osmond albums, but I have seen that group live. But it was in Branson.
Well, they're like,
does that count?
Branson. If you ever want to go down a funny rabbit hole, is go on YouTube and look at the number of heavy metal guys that were influenced by Crazy Horses by the Osmonds. Paul Gilbert, Mike Portnoy. I mean, there's a whole bunch of guys, and you even see tracks of these metal bands playing Crazy Horses by the Osmonds. So they actually had some cred with the rockers. Now, look, Russ is the one who gave us the idea of this question. Thank you, Russ, for being here. Russ says, "Don't judge me." There's no judgment here.
No
judgment here.
Sarcasm.
We might make fun of you, but we're not judging.
Yeah, we're not judging.
Don't judge me. Discovered Georgia Satellite's debut album. Love the whole album, but only knew Keep Your Hands to Yourself when I was young. And you know what? I think that's 85% of the people would say
actually that. I love that, that he came up with Georgia Satellites because, again, that's a little off to the left of, say, Styx or such, but right. I would think that's the prompt for the question. I think that's probably the best answer, is because I like that same album. That he's talking Georgia Satellite. You could play it and sing along with it, and it was. I don't think they were breaking new ground. I think, but sometimes it was just a favorite sound to hear.
I worked at a radio station, and JR. I had a couple friends. JR was one of them that I would sometimes be working like midnight to 6 in the morning, and I would JR and say, "JR, man, I need some Taco Bell really bad." And JR would deliver like at 12:30, 1 a.m. He'd bring me some tacos from Taco Bell. I had a couple friends.
I had to make a run to the border.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that was the go-to. I mean, you think about it. Taco Bell was open late. Drive-through. So if you needed to run to the border, by God, it was there.
And shortly after making a run to the border, you'd have to make a run to the little room too. But I only bring that up because Georgia Satellites was a current. That was one when I was working radio. That was a song that came out when I was a disc jockey at KRLG 98 FM, right out in the edge of town. So I have great memories of that song. But Russ, to your point, I don't know a whole lot of anything else from Georgia Satellite. So it sounds like you've at least dug into them a little bit more, which is awesome. Okay, so, and Bruce, of course, Bruce is from Georgia. Bruce lives in Atlanta, so he's familiar with Georgia Satellite. So that is awesome. Okay, now, JR, let's you and I start sharing. We'll go back and forth.
Sure. Well, I if you don't mind, I'll give a stab at it. No, I guess the way I look at that is probably going to be the most standard answer that you could put forward. And it's a band with basically 3 letters. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So obviously, my interpretation of what Yes as being a prolific rock and roll band or such, if you could call it that, was 1983. The album, help me out, 90125. Yes, yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. I like that. I thought I knew everything. I love Yes. And then much like Robert Palmer, only again, I got on with Robert Palmer a little bit because I did sit down and listen to more songs and understood that there's more than just one tune out there. With Yes, it's the same thing. Now you go backwards, and they certainly have a large portfolio of music that I just wasn't in touch with. And again, I poo-pooed it while I was listening to that album back in '83, and so, well, I just don't see why anyone will listen to this. But but you're not as musically inclined to understanding what the musician is doing. It's just my thoughts were probably no further than the top 40 hits of the time frame, and so it wasn't until later that I guess that's what we're asking. It wasn't until later that I understood that, and began to understand that Yes is a lot more than that one album. Absolutely. And interestingly enough, to the same point that you're making, that I'll listen to the essential Yes album on a platform like Apple Music or Spotify. And it's funny, I probably couldn't name the songs from the different years and albums, but I can tell you that I can listen pretty much to all of them and say that they do a good job of putting compilations together. And obviously, maybe I'm a little bit more mature of a listener now. Maybe I could take that. So that's Yes was for me.
And as soon as you said Yes, I'm like, that's a perfect example for me too, mm-hmm. because I think a lot of folks, Gen Xers, right? A lot of people from our generation that maybe didn't hear Fragile and Tales from Topographic Oceans and all of their earlier stuff. It was Owner of a Lonely Heart. That song was everywhere. That album was everywhere. Remember Leave It? There was Owners of a Lonely Heart. Leave. That was a huge album.
Changes.
It's a great album. And then you even bought that album that was like,
yeah, you're going to call
like solos. It was like live performances from the 90.
Yes, it was, but that was popular at that time, Jeremy. Right. They found ways to sell you the same album 5 ways. Exactly. And this one had this one had a different track, same song
version.
Yeah. So I bit into that.
And then that one specifically, JR, like me, we'd go to the recycled record store there on Sheridan Road next to Mario's Pizza, right?
Great pizza.
A great, yummy pizza. And so we went backwards, right? Then we start buying Fragile. We start buying the Yes album. Mm-hmm. We start buying Close to the Edge. And so it completely, the gateway though was 90125. And that's what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of Yes purists did not appreciate that album. They wanted the old stuff. But yeah, for me, totally, 90125 got me into Yes. That's a perfect example.
And probably had more commercial success. I would, in looking at it, maybe so.
Yeah, totally. Had that album, well, that's their best-selling album, right?
Yeah.
Had that album not happened, Yes would have been done.
But again,
that album resurrected them for another 20 years.
Yeah, but it took me years to be able to sit down and listen to some of the older stuff.
It's so. And even now, it's kind of, man, I don't. I mean, I like it, but
I can tell you at 57, I appreciate it a lot more, and that's why I say that I'm glad that there's a compilation process on these media platforms that stream music, because it's like, oh, I didn't know I like that.
There's the Talk album, which I think came out in the late 90s or maybe even early. That's
94.
94, is that when it came out? That's older than I thought. I love that album. I love that album. Okay, here's mine. I mentioned this earlier today when Russ brought up the question, but I'm going to bring it up again because this is probably different people listening. Dio era Black Sabbath. I never listened to Dio. Now, I was a huge Ozzy fan.
Yes.
I was all over Ozzy. But I just completely ignored the Dio era Sabbath, which doesn't make any sense because I was a huge Dio fan. When Last in Line or Holy Diver came out, and Last Night, I was there, but I just completely ignored Dio's Sabbath stuff until like 2000 when I bought, I think on clearance rack somewhere, I bought Mob Rules and Heaven and Hell's on CD, and I'm like, this stuff is awesome. How did I miss this in 1981 and 82? It was ridiculous. Yeah. So Black Sabbath is with Dio is one of those for me.
Well, I remember when you brought that to me, but here's how naive I was. I didn't know when Holy Diver came out. I didn't know Dio had been with Black Sabbath.
I knew he had been in Sabbath, but I never listened to him when he was in Sabbath.
Well, like I said, I know of course you're in radio, and you have when we were in high school, you were already DJing. So
I was working that. Yeah. I was a young DJ.
Yeah. I was it's like what is it? I was a young
teenage
werewolf. Yeah. I was a young American DJ.
Yeah. Bruce says Geddy Lee was the perfect person to sit in for Chris Squire, and that's a great video. I just watched that like 2 nights ago of Geddy. He knew that song. He had that Roundabout song nailed. So that was awesome. So yeah, for me it was Dio era Sabbath. I just completely overlooked it, and then when I started listening in 2000, I played the heck out of that because they're both Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules are both excellent albums all the way through. They're great albums. I still, if I had to choose between those two albums and the first two Ozzy albums, I get myself in trouble when I say this. I'd probably have to go with Ozzy, but let me put it this way. My personal opinion, Blizzard of Oz and Diary are better than any Black Sabbath album. But Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules, I think, are better than any Ozzy album after Blizzard of Oz. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me.
People will probably want to fight me on that, but that's just the way I feel. So,
well, you feel the way you feel, Jeremy, and there's no hiding that.
I am as God made me. Okay?
Exactly.
I am. Okay, so... Go ahead.
And I was going to say, we are live and dangerous, so whatever happens.
Dangerous the key word here. I got another comment I want to put up here because I meant to do this earlier. Bruce K. Rush is on a lot of people's list. Fortunately, not me. That was immediate when I first heard Xanadu as my first Rush song. Xanadu might be my favorite Rush song. So my gateway Rush album was 2112, but I didn't hear it till like 1981. So it was already been out like 5 years. But to your point, Bruce, that was my gateway. After that, then I remember this. Moving Pictures came out right after I had bought 2112 and All the World's a Stage. And then I just went backwards from there. I went back. I got Fly By Night. I got them all. And so by the time Signals came out, I already think I had most of the albums before that. But yeah, I think that's probably a Rush is probably pretty common.
And I jumped on with Moving Pictures, so that probably tell you again late to the game, but enjoyed it.
Yeah. It's awesome. Okay, what's your next band on your list?
Again, staying on topic, but not staying on topic. You're going to have to give me a little bit of a longer leash on this.
Okay.
Who I didn't listen to back in the day, formative years, but still I listened, that I look back and now had impact on me. This guy.
Oh.
Okay. So we don't think about Michael Bolton as a rock and roll entity.
Right.
And I didn't either. I'll tell you. If you asked me if I liked Michael Bolton back then, I was blasé. It depended on whether we were out on a date or whether we were out at the bar. But I never admitted Michael Bolton. But then, I remember hearing a few songs, and I was singing one, Everybody's Crazy. And there's an album. But I couldn't remember who sang it. And usually that's different for me because normally I can tell you. But his album, Everybody's Crazy, and then just Michael Bolton, the original album, those were rock albums.
Which one has Fool's Game? Is that on the first one?
That is on the first one. That is on this one.
Awesome. That album is awesome.
Yeah, it is. But what's interesting is I don't know that I could admit to liking Michael Bolton on Live and Dangerous because we're talking about classic guitar rock. But if you look at the way they put those two albums together, that's not Michael Bolton in the way that we think about him in a conventional way. Right. But I would argue that there's some at least some hairband type of approach, and I think several of those songs have good legs to stand on.
To me, the first album, his voice, his delivery, and remember, they played the heck out of Fool's Game on MTV in the early.
But you see, here's the thing: I remember Fool's Game. I just didn't remember it was him.
Yeah.
What is that? I don't. By design, I have a selective memory.
It's like almost a White Snake or Thin Lizzy vibe. I loved it. That first Michael Bolton album. But like you, I have not. The first time I listened to that album was probably 5 years ago.
Listen to the album. Yeah, no, I remember the song. It's kind of like I will tell you that I gave Joe Lynn Turner the credit for that song. I went looking for Joe Lynn Turner's album with Fool's Game.
Fool's Game. Yeah.
But it's not. Just so you know, if you go looking, it's not. And it's not because and of course that's kind of a slam on Joe Lynn Turner because he's a hell of a he's got a lot of talent, but for some reason I equated the two. But if you go back to what was that? Rescue You, I think they came out around the same time. I don't know.
I don't remember.
I think that Joe Lynn Turner was probably 84, 85, if I'm remembering right. Mm-hmm. And then it did a big blip, and then I lost track of Joe Lynn Turner, and I think that he, probably because he's the guru of solo albums, maybe, I don't know. Obviously, I didn't know about the relationship, honestly, I'll be with Rainbow and all of the other aspects, Jeremy, until you told me, Well,
it went right into this because one of the groups I have on my list is Rainbow, right? Because I wasn't super late, but I was very much a superficial fan, right? I'd see Rainbow. Remember the early days of MTV? You're like, what's the deal? Some of the videos had Joe Lynn Turner, then some of them had this short-haired guy that looked like James Dean. They had Graham Bonnet singing All Night Long or Since You've Been Gone. And so on the surface, I knew what MTV played of Rainbow. I never bought a Rainbow album until probably the late 90s. And then Rainbow's one of my favorite bands now. All eras, right? With Dio, with Graham, with Joe Lynn Turner. I love them all. But I never really got into it when they were contemporary.
Well, right? I want to ask you a bit of a trivia thing. Since You've Been Gone, Alcatraz or Rainbow?
So, it was Rainbow, but of course Graham Bonnet was in both, right? So then it goes to Alcatraz. There's the Alcatraz live sentence. They do the Rainbow tunes. So you could kind of say both, Right?
Yeah, I just wondered because I remember when I went to go look that up, I was like, I think you might remember this too, Jeremy. I wanted to learn to play some of that song, and
I remember we were messing around just trying to work out the chords for Since You've Been Gone.
Yes.
Da-na-na, da-na, da-na-na.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Okay, who do you have next on your list?
Well, this is going to be a reach, but you got to understand how I think. I liked a group called Crocus at one point, Headhunter. Okay. Lost track of them over the period of time, but they had a song that Ballroom Blitz that they had remade.
Yeah, a remake of a.
Okay, here's the thing. Listened to the loud music. I thought Ballroom Blitz was their song. I didn't know it was a remake. Mm-hmm. So when I found out who really, wrote that, put it to music, and they released it, it was a group called Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know anything about them at that time.
You know what? Sweet had some really cool songs, and they were cheesy, right? They were like Willy, 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 go home, all of that. And it's actually, there's some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. It was just crazy to me that you, they have a greatest hits album, Quinn the Eskimo, or not Quinn, that's Munford Man, but they have a greatest hits album, and I'm, what is it? Fox on the Run? Is that
Fox on the Run? Love is Like Oxygen. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff.
I'm thinking, I know this group, but I've never listened to them. And not at all. And so, but I remember that of course, the only real song that Ballroom Blitz that I liked was Crocus. And then, looking at the compilations, I don't know that they had the same success that Sweet had. If you look at it, even though I can name like 4 or 5 really good Crocus songs off the top of my head, I probably can name more Sweet songs that I listen to and still listen to. So
look at this. Russ, I was not aware of this. Sweet. The song I was surprised was a cover was New York Groove. Do you mean like the Ace Frehley New York Groove? That was a Sweet song? Is that what you're saying? I think that's what he's saying.
Wasn't that cool?
It is. I didn't know that. That's fascinating. Sweet had some great songs though, great poppy, and they were very campy, right? Their whole look, I mean, early 70s, 72, 73, they were funny. And check out this comment here. Bruce says, Dio with Randy Rhoads would have been huge. Yeah. And we all know the story. Dio or Randy he had already told Ozzy that he wasn't going to be with Ozzy much longer. He was going to leave after the Diary tour, supposedly. That would have been interesting. It's one of those, what if that would have happened? That would have been interesting. Russ says it wasn't Sweet. It was not Sweet, but a different band. I'll find. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you for checking that out. This is Mean Machine. This is my friend Greg at the Mean Machine. Crocus Midnight Maniac is a classic. Yes. That's the same album with Screaming in the Night, right? Screaming in the Night. And it had the song with Rob Halford on it, Ready to Burn. Are you ready to burn? That's an awesome album.
Eat the Rich.
Eat the Rich.
Yeah,
yes.
That my mom asked me, what are they saying?
yeah. You don't want to know, Mom. Let's just change this channel. Yeah. Totally. That is awesome. Okay, so here's mine. Next one on mine. A little band that, again, on the surface, I dug some of their songs I'd see on MTV. I'd see him in the movie. We'd go to the midnight movie and watch heavy metal. You'd hear a song from them, and you're like, that's pretty cool, right? But over the last 10 years or so, I've dug into them a little more. That's Blue Oyster Cult, right? So Burning for You, you'd see the video for Burning for You. You'd hear Veteran of the Psychic Wars in the heavy metal soundtrack. I'm like, that's pretty cool. And so I'm still not at the level that I would say I'm a huge fan, but I got like 6 albums, right, up there. Mm-hmm. And, Fire of Unknown Origin, Don't Fear the Reaper, Agents of Fortune, all that stuff. They got some good stuff, and they're a weird band. And when I say weird, I mean they write about things that are not. It's not your typical fare for many rock bands, and that's kind of what's cool about Blue Oyster Cult. So they were one I was. It's only been about the last 10 years that I've really dug a little deeper into it. Bruce says, I admit it, I like the B-52s and Devo. Nothing wrong with that. I love Devo. One of my formative memories was seeing Devo on Saturday Night Live performing Are We Not Men? We Are Devo, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought that was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen. But it was like a traffic accident. I couldn't not watch, right? I was like, what is this? I got to watch it. I got to watch it again. And so I've always had a soft spot for Devo.
I always think that when Nickelback sings What's on Joey's Head, it's those hats from Devo.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Mean Machine says they need more cowbell. The Cowbell Classic, I mean, that's launched an entire generation of folks that their only exposure to Blue Oyster Cult came by way of a Saturday Night Live skit, which is still one of the best ever. Of the cowbell.
Mm-hmm.
That's
rock and roll cowbell.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah, not to be confused with, other, orchestral type. Is that a word? Orchestral?
Orchestral? It is it's a word.
It is today.
Russ says New York Groove by Hello, an English band. Okay, awesome. Okay. Thank you for that. By the way, anyone else can chime in. We welcome your comments in the chat, so feel free to jump in. What did I just say? Oh, Blue Oyster Cult. What about you? What's the next one on your list?
This one is kind of a stretch, but I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. Golden Earring came to mind only because I knew them from one type of song, Twilight Zone. I couldn't.
Then you went back 10 years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. They had two big hits exactly 10 years apart. And I did the exact same thing. So again, MTV, Twilight Zone, help, I'm slipping into the Twilight Zone. I mean, that was played all the time and it was catchy. And then you find out 10 years earlier in 1973, they did Radar Love, also an awesome song.
Yeah. And I will tell you that they have some compilations that date all the way into what 5-10 years ago. That when you get on a music platform, the beauty of the Spotify world is that you can pick up. You don't have to go out and buy the album. And think about that. That probably opens up a lot more of the vaults, Jeremy, don't you think? I mean, here's the thing: we're talking about songs that we actually had to go listen to at the Recycle Records or Sound Discount Center, and you really had to take the thing out of the sleeve, run over, and put somebody else's earwax up to your head.
Exactly.
We were living dangerous then too.
Yeah.
So thinking about what we had to do to be able to understand a catalog of music from an artist back in say 1980s versus what we have to do now. So I think it's actually easier to have an appreciation now and to find those rare jewels like Golden Earring, where you go, okay, wow, they sang some really good other songs. But what I like is you see the downloads and you can kind of get a clue of what songs are getting a lot of play. And so Golden Earring does have a lot of different songs from across, and they've been around. They have staying power. I don't know. Again, I'm not familiar with the actual lineup in the band, but the fact is, I found something to like from their compilations that stretch decades.
So because all I could tell you about Golden Earring is those two songs, but it sounds like you've listened a little deeper into their catalog, and it's good.
Yeah, it is. It's good. It's one of those things where you go, man, I don't know why that wouldn't have hit. Maybe it was the wrong, a lot of times hits have to do with timing.
Right.
And I'll admit at the time, sometimes you're trying to be impressed the girl or such, and I've known about this band forever. And
you always want to be the first one to
exactly
find
something new. And so I remember I did that, and I pretended to like certain songs I hadn't really heard all the way, and then later on, like now, I go back and go, yeah, you know what? I didn't give myself enough credit,
right,
for liking Golden Earring back in the day.
Look at Russ's comment here. This is a great band, another late discovered band for me, Slade, and so Russ, this might be your story. This is my story about Slade. Is what's our first exposure to Slade? Most of us, it's Quiet Riot doing Come On Feel the Noise. They did Mama We're All Crazy Now, which was a Slade tune. Well, remember that Quiet Riot cover led to Slade releasing another album in like 84 with the Run, Run Away song. Run, run, she chameleon lying there in the sun. But if you go back, kind of like Sweet, you go back, and there are lots of other groups have covered Slade tunes, and you never really. I think they were definitely bigger in Europe than they were here, but you don't realize how popular they were. They had a lot of great songs. So
it's interesting what we can appreciate given time, and I've thought about some of the things before we went live on this, and I was thinking, man, do we think about fast forward or do we or rewind when we come up to some topics? Because you just mentioned this question to me, and I was thinking, okay, are we going to think about what we didn't listen to now and how these people have evolved? So I kind of came at it several different ways. And Jeremy, the thought of that is, again, the availability of catalogs of music are a lot more readily and easily accessible. So it's easier to kind of jump onto something and then go, I'm going to follow, like pulling that loose string on Grandma's sweater that she knitted for you. You pull that little string, and the next thing you know, you're standing there sleeveless. Well, totally. So I went down the rabbit hole on some of the different songs. I mean, this is a killer song.
And to that end, JR, I'll sound like the old guy yelling at the kids to stay out of my yard. There were times, right? Even you did this. I know you did it. We both did it. You'd sit at the radio, hovering over the record button, hoping they were going to play this new song. Oh, You Can Still Rock in America by Night Ranger. I'm going to listen tonight. When they play it, I'm going to record it. Right?
You heard it first.
Yeah. And so you'd have this mixtape where all the songs are missing the first 20 seconds, or there's a DJ talking over the beginning. But that's how you did it, because there was no guarantee that when you went to the record store, they'd have that record. It's
True.
Not these kids today with their instant gratification. Now you can literally go online and hear any song you want.
Huey Lewis did that to me. There was a song by Huey Lewis that his first song. I kept waiting for it. Who sings this? Whatever. I'm waiting for him to tell me, and I'm waiting to push that record button. I was like 5 seconds late.
Yeah.
But I remember that was when I wish I'd have caught the whole song. I ended up the recording as I played it through. I was new. This is the guy I'm listening to. Yeah. Well, the song's only been out 2 weeks.
Yeah. And Greg, Mean Machine Radio says, "Pardon me, fellas, time to pray to David Lee Roth." And then hocus pocus, my focus. Now get off my lawn. Yeah, that's exactly right. So Bruce, I think this is the name of Golden Earring's drummer. Is that right? Caesar Ziderwich? I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I think that's what Bruce is talking about there. Okay, so I've got another band. And I'm not sure, again, this is one I mentioned on the Daily Update today. I don't know if it fits the definition, because they were prominent before I was coming of age, right? They've been around a long time. And that is Pink Floyd, right? So my first exposure hearing about Pink Floyd, hearing anything from Pink Floyd, I was in 7th grade, and I heard Another Brick in the Wall, right? And so I was aware of what I heard on the radio. Later in high school, right, the movie The Wall came out. And so I think we were at a party once where we watched that out at Bert's house in Cache, or Indiahoma. Do you remember that? I think you were out there. A bunch of us were out there watching it, and the movie was terrible, right? The movie The Wall is pretty crappy. But, you know, that was my first exposure to Comfortably Numb, even though, you know, I just didn't have the Wall album or whatever. Mm-hmm. But my point is, it's really been only about the last 15 years that I've can say I'm a Pink Floyd fan. I just could never get into them. I thought they were a little depressing. I always thought David Gilmour was an awesome guitar player, but I just couldn't get into him. But I've finally, over the last few years, as I actually go back and listen, to your point, JR, because now we have the ability at any given time, I'm going to listen to Obscured by Clouds. Here's the whole album. I've been listening to Animals the last few days, and I've gained a bigger appreciation of that. But as a teenager, I had no interest in Pink Floyd at all. Just couldn't do it.
So. Well, that is interesting because the thoughts that there's probably some songs, Pink Floyd, that you heard so often you kind of had to put it into your repertoire of knowledge. But I could see where you could miss that song.
Well, yes, and of course the big pedestrian Pink Floyd hit. You know, I knew Money. I knew
the Wall.
I knew Comfortably Numb. That might be, but Pink Floyd is kind of like Led Zeppelin. They would name their songs, and you would have no idea that was the name of that song. Oh yeah, I've heard that song a jillion times. Mm-hmm. You know, someone would say, "Do you like the Pink Floyd song Eclipse?" Like, I don't know that I know that. So then when you hear it go, "Oh yeah, I've heard that." Do you like Have a Cigar? Oh, I don't even know if I know. Then you hear it and you go, "Oh yeah, I've heard it a million times." But yeah, it's some of that. Russ. This is the plight of all of us, I think, when we were kids. He says, there was no guarantee when I went to the record store that I had money in my wallet. Yeah, that's true. That's a true statement. Absolutely.
I remember having to pull my money. I'd look around to see what my brother was looking at and try to sell him on the album that I was wanting. Look, this is a great album. You're going to want to listen to this.
You should buy this. Yeah.
You should buy it. And then he would buy it, and it spent most of its life on my record player. But, that's why you have brothers, so you can sham them into purchasing albums that you normally couldn't afford.
That's leveraging your resources, JR. That's good.
Yeah, I'm sure you've indulged in that.
The power of other people's money. That's exactly what you were doing. I was
early. I was early on the scene with investing for return on investment. Yeah.
So MW, thank you for chiming in. MW, Jethro Tull, Saga, Sanctuary. Oh,
yeah,
Saga. No one can stop us now. See, but that's one of those that I know. The one song they played on MTV. They played On the Loose. They played The Flyer. Every time I hear them, I really like them, but I haven't taken the time to dig deep.
On the Loose. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a great song. I saw Saga open for Billy Squier. I know Greg, Mean Machine, he's a Billy Squier fan. I love Billy Squier. But I saw Saga opening for Billy Squier on the, what tour was that? Emotions in Motion tour.
Oh, that's been a while.
Own career. Yeah. We could do a whole episode on how Billy Squier messed up his career. Eric chimes in, speaking of Stevie Ray, or of Huey Lewis, Stevie Ray opened for Huey Lewis in the News back in the day. Yep.
That's almost absurd.
It seems crazy, doesn't it? Stevie Ray opened for The Who in the Cotton Bowl. And I saw that show. That was crazy.
Well, I saw Huey Lewis at the California State Fair in 2003.
Nice. And I don't know that does he still tour? He's getting up there.
He is, but he was good. He sounded just as good. And it was a live venue. I mean, an open venue.
Yeah. I know. I didn't go, but in 2013 he was in Seattle and he played there, and I had some friends that went to that. So,
well, I liked him a lot, but not. I mean, I had maybe 2 albums, but I need a new drug, that sort of thing.
All you need is Sports. I mean, that album had like 8 hits on it.
Yeah. He was good.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah.
But could you imagine that audience? I'm here to see Huey Lewis.
And then Stevie Ray's out there.
I can imagine what Huey must have thought before. Okay, we're going to have to go on.
Huey was a big fan of Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Okay.
And I've heard stories about this that, to your point, is a lot of the Huey fan base were like, dude, who's this blues guy? I don't know about this. But what's funny, and this always happens, you know that a ton of those people that were like talking about how much they didn't like Stevie Ray Vaughan, when Stevie Ray Vaughan got really big, they were probably talking about, yeah, I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan and he was awesome. You know that was happening.
Yeah, I would be one of those dudes, but I actually always liked Stevie Ray Vaughan, so it wouldn't be that. But I didn't like him as much as you did. Well, I wasn't exposed to him as much as what you had, because the Double Trouble, the album, I knew exactly what to get you if it was, that sort of thing. And I just remember that you took it to another level, which I thought was good.
I went through a big Stevie Ray Vaughan phase, and I really liked him. And he was one of the guys, when a musician or celebrity dies, we don't know him. Right? We don't know them, but there are some that hit you harder than others, right? I was a huge Randy Rhoads fan, but mostly after he had already died. So I don't remember feeling really sad when he died. I remember the years following, as I'm really getting into Randy Rhoads, I'm like, man, I wish he wouldn't have died. But you know who hit me hard? Stevie Ray Vaughan, when he died. That was one I was like, oh, man. And John Denver. Okay. Just so much of my growing up listening to John Denver. So those two artists probably more than anyone.
Yeah, I think about that because I was just watching the Stevie Ray Vaughan growth at that point, and you were already, you knew tons about him. You knew you could play several of the songs and
I tried.
Yeah, you did a good job. You always diminish your talent, but think about your YouTube experience. You're more famous probably in some ways for playing the guitar. So no, I think that if anyone was on the Stevie Ray Vaughan bandwagon early, it was you. And
I was on pretty early. Yeah.
And I'm sure you were glad when he was making the recovery,
Oh, for sure. And he was playing great. And that's the really sad irony is he had cleaned himself up. He was happy. He was in such a good space. He had just put out the In Step album, and then he dies. So that was a sad.
That was a bleak day. And I remember again that I knew you then. So, I remember that. I remember the impact.
Well, this is a very good point that Bruce brings up, because I think we all fall into this. I think everyone, I don't know everyone personally, but I know Bruce a little bit. I know Greg. I'm guessing we're all around the same age. And so I bet this point Bruce makes is we all relate to this. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of 60s bands that I had to learn later in life naturally because I was born you were born in the 60s, the late 60s. So going back to these classic bands, well, even Led Zeppelin. I mean, really, their rise to fame was when we were all just little kids, didn't even know who they were, right? So I think most of us have to go backwards in time, even the Beatles, obviously, to do that. So Eric says John Denver, the Colorado State human. Yes, he is, right? He was the Colorado's son, right? He was. I just loved John Denver. He was awesome. John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, again, 60s band that we go back, we dig back to the roots to dig out these older bands, and that's fun, right? I mean, that's awesome. So, do you have anyone else on your list? I have one more band on my list. I don't know.
Nothing of consequence. I had brought some stuff up that I thought, well, when we got on topic, I can, I can chase the rabbit any direction. And I was chasing forward in some cases, like bands that were still turning out music that I could listen to now and go, oh, really? That's Candlebox.
Well, give us an example of one.
Well, Candlebox. They came out, with an album in 2021. And
I had no idea.
Yeah, My Weakness, all downhill from here. It's kind of a fun song because he talks about being on top of the game musically, and then it's all downhill from now.
Yeah,
but it's a good song, and I would venture a guess that both of those songs for Candlebox probably would have done or should do well. They're easy to listen to, and they certainly make you think, well, these guys have talent, because here we are, I'm listening to them in 2021, 2022, and that goes a long ways from 1994. But
sure.
That's probably the only notable one. There's a lot of things I could mention, but that's probably the only notable thing.
Let me throw one out, and you'll be surprised when I throw this one out, because we've done an episode about this band, and they're a huge band. But really, based on the question, again, I'm going to show our question against anyone coming in later, so they see what the original question was. Oh, it's already up. Sorry. What artists or albums came to prominence during your formative years that you never really got into until much later? And of course, Russ is the one that really gave me this idea. He gave me a question very similar.
Inspiration.
He was the inspiration for this. Thank you, Russ. So don't laugh when I say this, but based on that question, I'm going to say Kiss. And here's why I'm going to say Kiss. I never bought a Kiss album until I was an adult, till I was in my 20s. And then the first one I bought was a Kiss Greatest Hits. That's not true. I had Lick It Up. I bought Lick It Up when I was a junior in high school.
Okay. Yeah. Here's the thing. Do you listen to some of those songs and think back, man, I thought this was heavy? Yeah. I play some songs off of the Kiss albums that I didn't get a chance to play a lot when I was younger, but I played them thinking, oh, no, this is the devil's music. This is loud. This is a lot of bass. And you listen to it, and now it sounds like something, I guess the way I would have looked at the 60s version of the Rolling Stones. It's like, or some of the bubblegum music of that. It's like, oh, this isn't heavy at all. Of course, then you've been exposed to heavy metal, and you've been exposed to the progressions of talent, plus the sound magic of the soundboard, what they can do now with digital music, and you go, oh, well, that's not as heavy of rock as at least with Kiss. I remember thinking this is going to be really heavy. I shouldn't listen to this, and then now it's like,
go back and listen to that. First of all, the first Kiss album is really good. There's a lot of their big songs are on that very first album. But I completely agree. And even you go back and listen to Iron Maiden, which at the time I thought that was so heavy, and I didn't want my mom to find my record covers, or I didn't want her to hear me listening to this music that was so heavy.
Yeah, we don't want that judgment.
Yeah, exactly. But now you go back and listen to 2 Minutes to Midnight or something, and it's like, it's great. It's great. But compared to what, I never got into the super heavy stuff after that. To me, Maiden was, that was perfect. But your point's exactly right. You go back and listen, and what we thought was way heavy back then really doesn't sound that heavy.
So, and then it's interesting too, because then you start saying, oh, that sounds a little bit like this. And then the thread starts coming, like I said, where you go backwards and see where that person's influences are. I wasn't worried about who influenced who in 1983.
Yeah, exactly.
It was an original sound. This is new. And you go like, nah, probably not as original as you think. In fact, the bar chords they used were probably reproduced in another song. It's just that, and what was it? You told me every good rock and roll song is basically 1 chord or 2 chords.
Well, there's rock songs are not. There's some exceptions, but for the most part, you could take that basic 1-4-5 blues pattern. It became a rock pattern, and that's the blueprint for so many songs. It's still 3 chords. ZZ Top, ZZ Top is, they're still using that same.
And it's amazing what you can do with 3 chords and sound so much different from ZZ Top,
Absolutely.
and then also, you think about bands like Metallica, heavy stuff that we thought, oh, this is just way too loud. Now I go back and listen to some of that stuff and go like, this is really just, not as intense as I gave it credit for at the time. And again, maybe that's the enjoyment part of going back and finding, something you hadn't listened to when it was there and enjoying it now.
Yeah, for sure. Eric's comment, my uncle played in a band in the late 60s called Purple Paisley Water Closet. I suspect they were smoking something. Probably a good assumption. Now, MW, I don't mean to, no judgment here, okay? There's no judgment, but we will make fun of you, right? Crash Test Dummies. I could never get into Crash Test Dummies. Sorry, MW. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. I will say this, because we're open-minded.
Kind of.
Point it, maybe.
It's good. It's classic guitar rock.
Yeah, but here's all I'd say to MW. Lead us in the way. What should we listen to from Crash Test Dummies that might change our mind?
That's a good way to approach this. What would change our mind? Because I will listen.
Because right now where I'm at, what I have heard of Crash, I'm not a fan. Okay, I'm just saying. So if you have been through that, because it sounds like you had to go through this process. Because the whole question is a band you never really got into till later. So it makes me think you got into them later. You might have been just like JR and I when they were popular and think, I'm not into this. So I would be interested.
Yeah, post something.
Where we go. Post something or even email us.
Yeah. What is it that controversy is where you sit down and say Crash Test Dummies is the greatest band on earth? Prove me wrong.
Yeah. What? Yeah, exactly. I would like someone to. I'm going to get myself in trouble here because I had. Okay, here. Oh, here we go. So MW says God shuffled his feet, the entire album, and A Worm's Life. Okay, here's my commitment to you. I'm going to listen. JR is going to do it too. We're going to listen.
Yes.
Doesn't mean we're going to like them.
But we will listen.
We might come back on here and make fun of you, MW. I
doubt it.
I don't think. But we will listen to it. So,
I'm writing it down.
So am I. Well, I'm not.
I can see you're not.
I'm not. Yeah. Okay. But I will listen to those. I will absolutely listen to those. Okay. Perfect. No. Now we're about out of time. But this has got me thinking about a lot of things here. So I'm going to check out the Crash Test Dummies and see how we like that. I appreciate it.
Actually, thank you, MW. We seek the new...
we seek enlightenment.
Enlightenment, yeah. and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate that. Thanks so much to all of you guys who are chiming in. Any of you that are watching or listening and didn't chime in, that's fine too. Thank you so much. MW is a Testament Megadeth fan.
Okay.
This is
now
context because here's a Testament Megadeth fan, which is kind of more in our camp. And yet he took that journey around. He sought the path of enlightenment and checked out something new and different.
I seek the path of enlightenment, and I just didn't know it was going to go through Crash Test Dummies. But here's the thing: you said it though, Jeremy. When you put the challenge out, we ask you for things that would
totally.
pose the question was exactly. There's a chance that MW got the assignment.
He did. Okay, JR, when you can grab the pebble from my hand, time for you to leave. Okay, all right. There you go. Rangers, Giants, Yankees. He's covering all his bases there. Rangers, Giants, Yankees. He's in New York. Hello. Thank you for joining us. So,
you say hello?
Oh, Bruce. Okay, we got to go, but we have to talk about this here. Okay, if you ever just want to laugh, you got to watch Gwar. The Gwar is like, they're so over the top and creepy that it's campy, right? They are I can't describe them. They dress like monsters. They have blood squirting all over when they play. I mean, it's like demented HR puffin stuff guys in a band. Everyone's got to go watch a Gore video.
Okay, I'm on for Gore now too. So I've got 2 assignments.
You got to add them. And lastly, Jackie. Hi, Jackie. Jackie didn't say anything other than some symbols there. So, but thank you for chiming in. And guys, if you follow us on Twitter, that is awesome. If you don't follow us on Twitter, give us a follow on Twitter.
Why not?
Yeah, and I always want to put this last message up here just so people know. And that is, for only $1 a month, you can subscribe to the best podcast on the planet. Or you can subscribe to ours. Okay, so the choice is yours. But yeah, for just $1 a month, you can follow the podcast. And we thank you all so much. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll do it all again sometime.
Soon. Yeah, we're going to do it soon.
Sooner than 2 months. And I think starting tomorrow, we're going to start posting the daily update as a podcast episode as well. So JR, my friend.
Jeremy, my friend.
Thank you for joining. And all of you who tuned in and chimed in, thank you so much. We'll do it all again soon. Thank you and good night. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Good evening.
Thanks for listening to the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast.
Oh, sweetness.
Please like, subscribe, and share. You can email us at classicguitarrock@mail.com.
We're not ordinary people. We're morons.
We'll see you for the next episode of the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast.